right, good evening, everybody. This is Alan with This Truth. I wanted to talk just a little bit about the No Kings protest across the country on Saturday. I've seen numerous reports out there from different podcasters, YouTubers, news outlets, and I can't even believe I'm really going to actually talk about this, but it's as underwhelming as you might think. Yeah, there's a large gathering of people in different places, but what did they achieve? And I've been asking myself that one question about protest in the modern era. What are they achieving? Now, 250 years ago, yeah, I can understand. Um, Newspaper was barely happening, and you had a town crier, with announcements, but that was about it. They really had no other way, Pony Express, to get word out to your elected officials. So, today in 2025, are we achieving anything by these protest gatherings? No matter what the cause, is it actually achieving anything, or is it just irritating people because their daily commute is disrupted? Or if it happens to be somewhat more aggressive, uh, families can't take their children to parks because there's gatherings there. There was two close to me. There was one up in Port Charlotte and another one in Fort Myers. So I didn't really get out that much on Saturday. I did a little bit first thing in the morning, and then that was that. Anytime there's parades or protests or anything going on, I kind of stick around the house because it's a whole lot of hoopla that just really inconveniences the flow of my day. And like I said, are we actually achieving anything with these types of protests? Whether it's No Kings, which seems like a somewhat of a daft reason for a protest, or is it climate, or is it abortion rights, or something having to do with pride, or uh, PETA and animal cruelty, civil liberties? Are we achieving anything? Criminal justice reform. I've seen things about that over the years. Protesting against a war or a certain type of military action. So I don't know what they're trying to achieve other than it's a day off work and they get to hang out and make some racket. Did anybody listen? Did any decision makers take it to heart and go, okay, I'm going to change my position because of this protest? I have little faith in that. I really do. And let's just go back to the premise of what the protests were. Now, we saw this earlier in the year. There was some No King things going on earlier this year, but the premise of it, No Kings, okay? And I heard some other podcasters and some other people on the internet and different places say, yeah, we've got a No Kings Day. It's called the 4th of July. And the ultimate No Kings protest, the Revolutionary War, Declaration of Independence, United States Constitution. The 4th of July is what they are saying is our No Kings Day. And that I can understand. As far as the modern era in America, with our political system, I don't see how we could have a king or a queen or a monarchy, a patriarchy, or a matriarchy. There's just too much in the Constitution to prevent that from happening. And so it got me to thinking, okay, are the persons that are taking part in this protest that are protesting no kings, no monarchy, etc. Where are they getting that from? Because most presidents are acting full within their presidential authority, and we have checks and balances to keep them on the track if they try to go astray and go rogue, go off road. So I don't really understand why they're saying no king. So I'm trying to wrap my head around it. And it got to me to remembering some of my history that at times in this country, presidential powers have been expanded, and the role and size of government has also expanded. And I remember that that's taken place, before in this nation's history. So I was like, well, if we want to say no kings, that the president has too much authority, too much unilateral authority, then where did that come from? So, citing Google, here we go. Very first thing that popped up, Google's AI summation of my query says this. My question was this: what administration expanded the U.S. presidential powers? And it came out with multiple administrations have expanded U.S. presidential powers throughout history, typically during times of crisis. The administration most often cited for the greatest and most significant expansion that fundamentally reshaped the modern presidency is that of Franklin D. Roosevelt, otherwise known as FDR. Key administrations that have expanded presidential authority: Franklin D. Roosevelt. His administration during the Great Depression and World War II vastly expanded the role of the federal government and the executive branch. He used a record number of executive orders, over 3,700, to implement his New Deal programs and manage the war effort, establishing the modern, powerful presidency. Abraham Lincoln. During the Civil War, Lincoln took constitutionally dubious actions, such as calling for military volunteers and suspending habeas corpus, arguing that the preservation of the Union required an expansive use of presidential war powers. Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson. These early 20th century presidents helped establish the institutionalized presidency by drawing on precedents to exert executive force in areas like mediating labor disputes and managing foreign affairs. Now, if you remember, Theodore Roosevelt, he tackled big business, monopolies, antitrust. That was all coming from him. Woodrow Wilson, I didn't really dig into Woodrow Wilson because he's one of the presidents I kind of just casually forget about. There's a number of presidents that just don't stick out in my head, and he's one of them. Let's see, George W. Bush, Barack Obama, and Donald Trump groups all three of these together. In the modern era, the presidencies following the September 11th attacks saw significant expansions of power related to national security, surveillance, and war powers, often with congressional support. That was more George W. Bush than Barack Obama and Donald Trump. Because after 9/11, we had George W. Bush actually created a new department in the federal government, Department of Homeland Security, and also that's where authorization was given to surveil and spy on American citizens, phone calls, emails, whatever it might be, wiretaps. You go back and dig, and you'll find that under George W. Bush. Andrew Jackson, he transformed the presidency into a more political office and asserted presidential power as the first great Democratic leader. Andrew Jackson was kind of a mixed bag. Yeah, he was the founder of the Democrat Party, which a group splintered off from and formed the Democrat-Republican Party, which then became the Republican Party of Abraham Lincoln to abolish slavery. And that was the sole purpose. So in summation, it says, while many presidents have contributed to the gradual expansion of executive authority, FDR's administration is widely recognized as the benchmark for the significant and lasting increase in presidential power. And so I crossed that with Harvard Law Today, an article they had out in 2019. And it pretty much coincided with that. It backed it up. So I don't just take what AI gives me. I do try to look around and find credibility. Let's see. because part of what the framers were doing, they didn't want any chief executive to have the kind of power that the British monarch had, which is why our documents are written in the way that they are, with the checks and balances between the three branches of government and the bicameral legislature. Let's see. It says George Washington laid it out explicitly in his farewell address. This is coming from the Harvard Law. George Washington laid it out explicitly in his farewell address. By the end of World War II, the United States was the world's greatest power. After the Cold War, it was the only superpower left. It's a vastly different role for the United States to play. As a country takes on a greater international role, it's not surprising the president would become more powerful. Okay, yeah, that's a bit ambiguous. I shouldn't even have read that. By the mid-20th century, for example, the expanding number of administrative agencies from the Federal Communications Commission to the Environmental Protection Agency were all in varying degrees under the president's control. The leaders a president chose for the agencies effectively allowed the high-level control of the policies likely to come out of them. Let's see. An early example of the growth can be seen in Lincoln's administration. Lincoln may not have had any specific ambitions to expand the relatively modest presidential powers when he arrived, but when the Civil War broke out, he didn't hesitate to push the limits on the powers, if not defy them entirely. Lincoln called for 75,000 military volunteers after Confederates fired on Fort Sumter, and he later suspended habeas corpus, which I previously read. Similarly, both congressional powers. He also authorized military trials of civilians. He did all sorts of things that were constitutionally dubious. But during wartime, people expect the commander-in-chief to win the war. They don't care that much about constitutional niceties. And like I said, this is from Harvard Law Today, back in 2019. 80 years later, during World War II, Franklin D. Roosevelt also expanded his reach of control through a pair of War Powers Acts. For example, Roosevelt increased his authority to reorganize vast swaths of the executive branch and independent government agencies to support the war effort. He gave himself authority to censor mail. I don't know what that's going to do. He also cracked open previously confidential information from the census, which ultimately led to a Japanese-American internment. He did have an executive order out there that put Japanese Americans in internment camps. That was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. More recent presidents have also used cataclysmic events, most notably the attacks of September 11th, to leverage significant power. And the expansion of those presidential powers linked to 9/11 have generally come with congressional support and spanned the presidencies of Bush, Obama, and Trump. But primarily, it was the nuts of it was George Bush. Let's see here. Presidents have been detaining enemy combatants at the Guantanamo Bay Detention Center without trial for more than 18 years. So this was in 2019. So September 11th was in 2001. So yeah, it's more than 18 years. Why not just say 19 years? Or 18 years and change. Yeah. Anyways, that's just semantics. The executive branch's powers of secret surveillance in the domestic realm are super broad as a result of congressional authorizations. So Bush started that up. Congress said, yeah, let's spy on our citizens. Goes on to say, during the Great Depression, for example, FDR's wide-ranging New Deal programs designed to improve consumer confidence and support workers also strengthened his ability to regulate the economy. Even if times of crisis open up new opportunities for presidents to take decisive, meaningful action with fewer constraints, limits do remain. FDR, who often seemed to increase his powers with impunity, who occasionally was occasionally checked by the judicial branch. During the Depression, he issued an executive order that prohibited hoarding gold and demanded that all people and companies deposit their gold with the Federal Reserve, just weeks before abandoning the gold standard entirely. So he confiscated everybody's gold. And that was weeks before the standard was abandoned. He knew that was coming. He knew exactly what he was doing. So that's nefarious. Shouldn't have done that. He invalidated contracts written specifically to avoid legal and economic consequences of the order. Later, however, in the Gold Clause cases, the Supreme Court struck down some of FDR's actions. Unwritten rules are made to be broken. Let's see. Article 2 leaves wide swaths of open space in which presidents can flexibly interpret their powers. Perhaps not surprisingly, presidents typically do so in their own favor. Often, a president's power is prescribed not explicitly by Article 2, but by the norms created over the course of 2 centuries of history, and that would be precedent. I'm scanning to see if there's anything else really pertinent in here. You see, another norm that had been stress tested is the idea of investigatory independence. Though the FBI might technically be within the president's purview, after Nixon and the Watergate scandal, presidents have generally treated individual investigatory decisions, especially where investigations touch on White House activity or personnel, as outside of the president's direct control. And individual administrations have adopted specific policies and procedures to limit White House contacts with the Justice Department, including the FBI, without specific investigatory matters. President Trump hasn't embraced this norm. He publicly criticized the FBI's leaders and threatened to get involved in investigations. But then Attorney General Jeff Sessions' recusal from the Russia investigation and the decision of then Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein to appoint a special prosecutor, among other moves, suggests how countervailing forces can help a norm prevail. When others react negatively to the norm break and even take measures to reinforce or shore up the norm, then the norm itself can be further entrenched. Other norms are fallen away. For example, the framers, particularly concerned with the idea of a demagogue coming to power, were not enthusiastic about presidents addressing the people directly. In general, presidents were expected to share policy positions with Congress in writing. Andrew Jackson pushed against the norms. Presidents Teddy Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson went on to shatter the regularly engaging with the public. Later, FDR used fireside chats to captivate a nation and persuade the public to get behind some of his grandest policies. Plenty of presidents have drawn from the playbook since. Kennedy's knockout television performance to Obama's early use of social media platforms, including Facebook. Trump's use of Twitter as a primary mode of presidential communication. And the author here says, the value of the rhetorical presidency is significant. That he doesn't think FDR could have had the power he did if he didn't have the ability to do his radio chats. And additionally, Trump wouldn't be president if it weren't for Twitter and his ability to reach tens of millions of people directly. Okay, the next contributor is Neil Eggleston. He was a White House counsel from 2014 to 2017. So he was there at the tail end of Obama and the beginning of Trump. It says that the Bush used executive orders to establish the Guantanamo Bay detention camp despite significant protests. Obama used executive orders to expand immigration protections for immigrants who arrived in the United States as children through DACA. His order for the parents of these children, DAPA, was blocked in federal court. Eggleston adds that Trump has pursued his own controversial executive orders, among them the travel ban, which suspended the issuance of visas for people from 7 countries, 5 of them Muslim majorities. Today, a portion of an adapted order continues to stand. Obama did the same thing. Actually, the same exact countries. Presidents are often particularly assertive about pushing the limits of power when it comes to pursuing the promises on which they stake their campaigns. Obama worked to get pieces of the Affordable Care Act funded. And I've said some things about the Affordable Care Act. I think that's going to flounder. With private planes being, more affordable, the only people you're going to end up with on the Affordable Care Act, the Obamacare marketplace, is those that are needing subsidies without anybody paying in to offset those subsidies. So it's going to be a bleeding social program we're going to have to pump money into just to keep those that need the subsidies to continue to be subsidized. Not the additional subsidies that are, going through Congress right now for the shutdown. But, the general. Because if I'm going to pay $720 a month when I can get a private plan for $450, I'm saving $270 a month. So that's $270 going towards somebody else's plan that needs a subsidy. So, and then one other place was the New York Times. And of course, it's an op-ed, so it is very partisan. It begins with Donald Trump's wrecking ball second term has revealed the full latent power of the presidency. His administration has done the most clearly in its comprehensive elimination of legal and norm-based checks inside the executive branch. Its systematic disrespect of judicial process, its extortionate abuse of government power to crush foes, and its destructive rhetoric and nastiness. Told you it was partisan. This is by Jack Landman Goldsmith from May 6th of 2025. He goes on to say the presidency needs reformed and Americans must consider ways, however implausible they may seem in the context of today's politics, to get there. Expansionist presidential acts go all the way back to George Washington, who invited charges of monarchism with his use of the Constitution's broad yet undefined executive power. From there, the presidency, with its loose design, grew and grew with major surges during the Civil War and New Deal era. Well, that's the same thing that what we got from Google AI and also from Harvard Law. Mr. Trump's radical second presidency is, to an unappreciated extent, operating from a playbook devised by his modern predecessors. Like I said, precedent. His use of emergency powers to impose broad tariffs is similar to the move made in 1971 by Richard Nixon. His claims of untouchable national security authority echo arguments made after the September 11th attacks by George W. Bush administration. Presidents for decades have issued pardons as political personal favors. Whole throughout the article, it says Mr. Trump instead of President Trump. Regardless of who's in office. And he also says Mr. Biden in here too. So I guess he doesn't have respect for the office of the presidency, because I'm not seeing anybody being called by title anywhere in here. Mr. Biden, Trump. Mr. Biden administration, the Obama administration, Mr. Trump again, Mr. Trump again, Mr. Trump again, Trump 2.0, Mr. Trump. A lot of Trump in here. President Harry Truman. Well, we got a president in there. What do they refer to the other ones? We got President Barack Obama, President Richard Nixon, George Washington, no president. Looking for a pattern, that's all. Yeah, so Jimmy Carter, no president there either. So I don't know. I referred to everybody that's held the office by president, former president. So there you go. That it's been expanding over time with the biggest surges by FDR. And I've said it many times, and maybe not on video, but there's a lot of things that came out of the New Deal and up through till about 1960. A lot of things that were created and established within our government, whether it's policies or laws or what have you, that are really no longer applicable to today in 2025. They really aren't. Now, I love the civil rights. I do. That absolutely needs to stay, and that's one of the things that's being discussed in the Supreme Court is Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, and how it's trying to be construed and twisted that the Americans Disability Act applies to minorities having access to voting locations. The math doesn't math on that one for me. So I don't know what Justice Jackson is talking about there. I have no idea. I don't know. IDs for voting has been a hot button topic for many years that shouldn't be a hot button topic. You can get an ID $5, and most metro areas, the bus goes right by it, or subway, or an L train. Or you can take an Uber. It's not hard. Even the poor have access to Google. And you don't even have to go down to the DMV to renew your ID or your license. You can do it online. Different states have different rules regarding that. Me, I've got an 8-year license. I can renew it again online for another 8 years if I so choose to. But, I'm going to want to update my picture and address and things of that nature, I'm sure. So I always go in because I tend to look different every time I have a photo, every 8 years. I think most of us do. But does the president have too much power? Yes or no? Think of it like this. If you're not familiar with the way corporate America operates, then let me explain it to you. Corporate America, you've got CEO, executive leaders, whether it be presidents, divisional presidents, executive vice presidents, regional vice presidents or directors of departments. So there's a whole executive administration headed up by the CEO. The CEO typically is also on the board of directors. Okay, and there's also a office of general counsel, and then you've got risk management and other departments, marketing, HR. Depending on the company, depends on the different divisions. But all of them pretty much got that structure. You've got a CEO, you've got a board, and you've got an office of general counsel. You've got office of accounting, so on and so forth. So that's kind of like how our government is set up. The president is the CEO, the board of directors is Congress, and the office of general counsel, well, that would be the Supreme Court. The office of general counsel in a corporation is to keep the company legal, okay, to mitigate legal risk. The board of directors makes decisions and can stop the CEO from doing certain things. The CEO can make decisions on his or her own, but the board of directors has the power to stop some things. And that's much like how our country is set up, except our board of directors has 535 people. Our office of general counsel has got nine attorneys in it. So, and then, the cabinet and all the different department heads are the same as like within a normal, corporate organization. So does he have too much power? I kind of like what he's doing. He's getting shit done. Is it happening in the way that some of us like it? No, but it's getting done. Okay. He can only do so much because he is limited, which I don't want anybody to have, total power and can't be stopped from doing anything. No, absolutely not. Um, but it seems that our Congress takes a little too damn long to get anything done because they're too focused on their next election, or they're 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 playing partisan politics to a degree of what's going to enrich themselves, their family, or their constituents. And I'm telling you, so many Americans say the same damn thing. It's not just me. I'm not pointing the finger at any party. There are people on both sides, both red and blue, Republican and Democrat, that are lining their damn pockets. And we need reform, reform, reform from the top down in our government. We need to break it. And that's what President Trump is doing. He's breaking it. Uh, everything from Congress trading stocks, Congress or their family members or their friend, owning NGOs. They're getting government contracts, 8, 9, 10-figure government contracts. And the NGO's only been up for a month, 2 months, 3 months. Has no record to win a bid that damn big. I can't start an NGO today and win a 10-figure bid. It's not going to happen. But somebody in another state that has got a hook in Congress can get it done. So NGOs, lobbyists, our judicial system, a prosecutorial system, and me just being in Florida, and I want to go to Florida just for a minute. We've got a sheriff in Polk County. His name is Grady Judd. He is tough on crime, and he is all about going online and embarrassing the people that they arrest. It makes a fool out of them because they made a fool out of themselves with their poor choices. Now, I am of the belief that we have to be tough on crime, and I don't mean tough like we just need to go back to where we once were 30 years ago. No, I mean hard, real hard. And if you get issues your first time offense, yeah, let's make it light. You come back on another offense, whether it's the same damn thing or not, but you come up with another offense. Okay, well, we didn't learn a lesson from the last time we were in legal trouble, so we're going to ratchet that up. Okay, we're going to go with the maximum in that. Okay, whether it's a financial fine or jail time or community service, doesn't matter. And then a third one, well, we're going to double the maximum. And if you come back that fourth time, well, it's time to schedule an extended stay because we're not getting the message, whoever that offender is. And that goes from everything from traffic violations to misdemeanors to felonies to capital crimes. Doesn't matter. I'm also of the belief that if our punishments for these different, for all these legal infractions was so severe that in itself would deter a lot of the crime. Like take the organized retail theft, the mobs of people rushing into the stores. If they knew they're going to go to prison for 5 years, I don't think they'd be too eager to go out and engage in that activity. Even though faces are covered, some of them are getting caught, some of them aren't. In Cape Coral, there was a lady, a TikTok influencer, got caught shoplifting from Target, bonded out of jail. A month later, she was arrested again, shoplifting from the same Target. Now she's being held without bond. For something else. Saw her in the news again. So if we go back to common sense, there's other countries that are horrendously severe in the punishment of their crimes, and it's largely crime free. Now, Southwest Florida is a night and day difference from what I'm used to in Memphis, Tennessee. A buddy of mine in Port Charlotte said, "Hey, the violent crime's getting out of hand." I said, "What violent crime?" And he started listening. And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember saying something about that." But I'm from Memphis. I'm so numb to it. I don't even notice it. But he grew up here, and He's noticed it getting worse over time. And me, this is like heaven. I'm like, what crime? But I digress. So for today, are protests really doing anything? Are they accomplishing anything? Are they creating more division? Are they creating unity? That's a grip the mirror moment for anybody that wishes to protest. I'm not taking part in the protest. I got other things to do that are more productive. That's actually going to earn me money or bring peace to my day. So I'm not taking part in any protest. I probably never will, never have. I've never had anything political in my vehicle or out in the yard. I'm not going to do all that. I'm not going to do all that. I'll talk here. I'm an independent. I was middle line independent until the entire political spectrum moved on me. I didn't move, and so I'll just come across and talk about it. And I'll tell you who I voted for. But I look at everybody. And earlier today, while I was having my lunch, I was thinking to myself about, historically, presidents that are non-white, presidents that are female, and thinking about all that. And I was like, look, there's been a number of black men that have run for president. And we've had a number of women that have run for president. Donald Trump supported Jesse Jackson when he ran. He was a big supporter of Jesse Jackson. And back when President Obama got in the ring for presidency, the Republicans had a front runner that was black man running for president too. And oh my gosh, the Democrat side, the DNC, absolutely crushed him with opposition research. And always pay attention to that. Whoever the Democrats are hitting the hardest and going after the most, that's the one that they most fear that threatens them, that they could possibly, that's who they view as the greatest threat. And Democrats so badly needed to bring the first biracial president or the first black president or the first woman president, especially black president, because they were losing, even then, they were losing black-based voters. Now it's even at a greater rate of loss than it was back then. And they really needed that to keep themselves relevant. And so, of course, we know President Obama won. He's our first biracial president. A lot of people say that he's black, but he's not. He's biracial. He definitely has black qualities, but he's still 50% white. So we can't forget that. He's not black. Just like Kamala Harris is not black. She's South Asian. She does not look black in the slightest. She looks Indian. She does. And she didn't really start calling herself black till she was, up in the White House area. Through her entire career, she was South Asian Indian. So the women that have run, men that run for president and women that run for president, I kind of know. Some of them, I know they're not going to be good because I already know their track record. Like when Hillary Clinton announced that she was moving to New York to run for Senate, I knew that was a bad idea. I knew that was not going to go good for us as a country. And I was right. Sarah Palin ran for president under the Republicans. I knew that wasn't going to go good. Elizabeth Warren. I just heard that sentence. Elizabeth Warren has announced her campaign for president of the United States. I went, oh, well, she's definitely not going to win. I know that. And what happened? Yeah. Nikki Haley was somebody that I was kind of paying attention to while she was a UN ambassador. But by the time she left that post, and within the few months afterwards, I knew then she wasn't going to be the gal for me to vote for. Kamala Harris, self-explanatory on that one. We all know her performance as VP, her performance as a DA, and I didn't approve of her being on the ticket with Joe Biden, but Joe Biden couldn't have anybody on there that looked better than him, so they had to pick somebody else below, which I think is kind of contradictory. You want somebody just as strong, if not stronger than you, because they're probably going to run when your term's up. So picking somebody that's less quality than you is counterproductive. So Klobuchar, I listened to her for a couple weeks, and I was out. Tulsi Gabbard, I'm still paying attention to her. I think there's something about her. I'll be interested to see if she jumps in on a vice president ticket someday. But I'm paying attention to her. There's not a Democrat woman that I know of that could beat her in head to head. But yeah, Tulsi Gabbard, who was formerly a Democrat, I'm definitely paying attention to her. She looks like a strong candidate. Somebody mentioned to me Marjorie Taylor Greene. No, she's too much of a spitfire, and we've got a spitfire in the Oval Office right now. And plus, I wonder how the Muslim countries would feel sitting across having to negotiate with the president of the most powerful country in the world, and that president's a woman. How are the Muslim leaders going to feel about that? Now, different countries have different levels of rights for women. So I know you get into, Iran, it ain't going to go good. Iran doesn't respect us now, but Iran will probably respect us even less with a woman in the presidency. But I'm ready for a woman president. I really am, and I have been for a long time. And when Madam President shows up and she's the right thing that we need for the country, I will wholeheartedly vote for her. But she's got to be what's right, just like any man that's running for president. They've got to be what's right. They do. I know there's another woman. I don't know if there's any other women that I would consider voting for at this moment in time, but Tulsi Gabbard would be one that I would be strongly considering. But yeah, so to recap the truth for the day, are protests really doing anything? Are they solving any problems? Are they bringing us closer together or driving us farther apart? Ask that to yourself when you're alone, and let me know what you think. I'm Alan Print for This Truth. Good night and be well.